Hey people, what's good? Mount Let the Hellfire. Welcome back to the channel. Today's the second entry in the Mini Draco customization or Mini Draco modification series. I still don't know what to call it. Neither of the terms exactly roll off the tongue. Either way, if you're new here, thanks for spending the time to listen to me blabber about weapons parts and how to install them. In today's entry, we're going over the proper fitment and installation of a JMAC muzzle device onto the Mini Draco. So this one right here. And if you've seen my JMAC muzzle device installation guide for the Zastava ZPAP M70 on my channel, the process is pretty much the same, with the only difference being that this is not a 360 device. I'll provide timestamps below so you could skip around and refer back to the first video in this series if you care to hear about the history of the Draco pistol, Romanian AKM small arms development, or how to install this guy. First, let's talk about the JMAC muzzle device. So this right here is a 2C 14-1 LH Facemount X37 HUB. The SKU makes a little bit more sense. It's RRD-2C-14F-X37. Now that's a mouthful where RRD stands for Recoil Reduction Device, 2C meaning a 2-port compensator, as you can see here, 14F meaning that it's 14 millimeter threaded or 14 left-hand millimeter threaded, and it's a face mount device. And you can see the flat in there. And the X37 series is just what the muzzle device belongs to, right? So not much to say about these, honestly. They're a break, but I just like them because they are externally hub threaded. The inside of it is bored to 39 caliber or 39 hundredths, however you want to say that. So there's a lot of wiggle room because it's overboard, so you won't get a strike in the muzzle device. Now, here's an important caveat about this boy right here. JMAC does not recommend this for barrels shorter than 10.5 inches, and well, the Mini Draco is at 7.75 inches. The caveat is further explained that the mag dumps and full auto fire would damage the device over a prolonged period of time. Likely it warped the device or it negatively impacted the heat treating. I'm still going to go ahead and install this. So, Your Honor, let it be known that I'm, probably a dumbass and doing goon shit like shooting a drum, double-tiddy-mag into trash will blow my can up and kill me. So I will try not to do that. Unlike the 360 X37 devices I installed on the M70, this does require timing. So I have some leftover shims that I purchased from Arms of America. JMAC, as of mid-September 2024, I forget what today's day is. It's either the 19th or the 20th. They still don't have shims in stocks, and it's been that way for a couple months. Now, a face mount device, which is what this is, again, look on the inside, means that it mounts against the face of the muzzle. Well, not against this is just the flesh hider. This is different than other types of muzzle devices on the AKM platforms that are either way overboard and mount with a detente and front sight post or on the front sight gas block combo like this one does. And it's also different from AR or other similar platform style muzzle devices that time against the shoulder of the barrel because there isn't a shoulder. And you don't want to mount against the front sight post or the front sight gas block because they don't typically stand up at 90 degrees and they're almost always forged or cast parts that have their own dimensional inconsistencies. So when you mount against them and you tighten it down, it's going to be clocked off. Lastly, the barrels can be bored out unevenly, meaning that the inner diameter is not centered on the outer diameter of the barrel. Honestly, for high quality AK factories, like the Poles, the Romanians with the Kajir factory, and any of the really nice cold hammer forged barrels you see here in the States, like high-end US made AKs like from Texas Weapon Systems, you shouldn't really see that issue. If you wanted to be sure, use a set of calipers to take the measurements around the inner diameter in different spots, being careful not to get the teeth of the calipers into the lands, as that'll give you incorrect measurements. A few thousandths won't hurt anything. Now, to close out the point about mounting with the front sight gas block, again, right here. I know Dead Air has their PBS1 copy, I think it's called, the Wolverine, that is 14 millimeter left-hand threaded, and it has a mount meant to be used with the detente, and it's progressively bored like the Putnik. So you could skip this step if you have a PBS1 and you just want to direct mount it instead and use the detente to keep it on there. Again, if your barrel isn't hilariously jacked up with the bore being off-centered, that's a perfectly fine option. So with all that said, there is another issue to contend with The Mini Draco doesn't have a 90-degree flat crown. It has a recessed crown. So to show you what I'm talking about, let me actually take off this goofy A2 flash hider. So it's kind of hard to see in here. But the real issue is, I don't care if there's like a slight recess, it's the edges are very thin and they're uneven. I'll flash up a picture of the rod alignment in the current state. That's the thing with the face mount devices. You got to have a 90-degree crown, or at least a 90-degree ledge that's perfectly flat. So that brings us to the second star of the show, the PTG Pacific Tool Engage 90-degree crowning tool. This is the high-speed version. They do have a carbide version. You should only use that if you have access to a lathe to get the tool up to the proper speed rate. That said, if you have a lathe, you're probably not watching this, and you could face off a barrel in many different ways. For us non-lathe having individuals, this is the best tool for the job. You just need to pick one with the proper pilot. This is the 30 cal pilot. When I bought this, they used to call it the Krinkov pilot, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm bugging out. But it sits inside of the barrel and keeps it more or less centered. The cutters are 90-degree perpendicular to ensure that you get a good cut. Now, as you can see, I'm going to do something else I've advised you folks not to do. I'm having this thing chucked up in a drill, nothing fancy. It's just a beat-up Ryobi 18-volt. And you're definitely going to want like a pan or a concrete floor, I guess, just to capture any extra lube. And you'll want a vise. All right, so this part's going to be largely boring. I'll either cut or fast forward this section. All you need to do is guide the pilot inside of the barrel and try to be as level and steady as possible. Remember, set your drill gun to the highest torque setting and go slow. You don't want to move a ton of material. You don't want to damage the cutter or your drill. And then, apply soda cutting fluid, some sort of lubricant here liberally, right? At the end, we're going to clean all this up, otherwise the Rocksett won't cure. So I'll shut the hell up and get started. Hey folks, recording this 2 weeks, I think, in the future now. I had to wait for more shims to get here from HK Parts. Arms of America didn't have them, and JMAC still doesn't have them. I've been touching off parts of the barrel with a file. I'll film a little bit because I still got to clean it up just to make me a little bit more comfortable with this. But if you do have a non-concentric barrel ever so slightly, again, use a pair of calipers to check, right? Make sure that you're measuring consistently. So pretty much anything within like a couple hundredths, I think you could fix with the file. So I'll get the camera reset up and then touch off a little bit more of this. I didn't record the full process, but this is something that you may have to do. And if you still can't fix it with a file, then obviously you're going to have to source you a new barrel or turn down a barrel on your own from a Green Mountain blank or something, and then send it off to an AK Smith to take this thing apart and reassemble it. So like I mentioned, sometimes you'll run into issues using this, either because you can't get it exactly set right, which is why you also shouldn't use it in a drill, but it's good for removing a lot of bulk material. So you could kind of pick it up in the lighting of the camera, but I've touched off, you know, at least a fingernail thickness, so a couple thou off of the top here. So when you torque down the muzzle device against this face, it's ever so slightly clocking up. So this is if, you know, if you're like full non-concentric, right, like you're a couple tenths over, you're boned, you got to get a new barrel. But honestly, this, like, you could kind of see on the camera, like it's pretty much dead center. It's just I couldn't get the face completely parallel. So all you need to do here is you just need any sort of file. Obviously, if you're skating a file, you know, the hardness of this should only be like 38 to 42 Rockwell. So any of these files will do. You don't need a huge one. You just need to take off material in the direction where you're touching, right? So I started pretty much with the rod touching on the left side. I started taking off the left side, and then it was touching on the top. So I started to take off the top because you're canting it ever so slightly up to move that rod in the center. Where it's at right now, I'm actually pretty comfortable, but I'm just going to touch off a hair more, right? So just want to get good contact and then move. Good contact and move. Don't do any sawing, right? You don't saw with a fucking file, for the love of God. And that does it. You could probably get it a little bit better than this, but honestly, I'm not gonna bother. That's that. So now on to the next part is to actually clean this up, blow some air on it, degrease it, get the Rocksett on it, torque it down, or at least just tighten it until you can't tighten it anymore with the little wrench. The Rocksett will do the rest, and then that'll be it for getting a JMAC onto your Draco. So the last step is to get this Rocksett on. Remember, you don't need a ton of Rocksett. This will literally last me probably a lifetime, if not more. I could let a bunch of people borrow this and I would never run out of it. And that's only 2 ounces. So we want to make sure that everything is cleared. So the first thing, some compressed air, because if you filed and if you've been shaving things off. And then next, get the ye old shop cloth with a little bit or a lot of isopropyl alcohol. And then, of course, inside of the actual muzzle device, you want to clean the threads up. See, it picked up a decent amount of crud. Remember, again, we're using a 19 millimeter. There are adapters that are this skinny that could take a torque wrench, but honestly, I don't have one, and the Rocksett's going to do most of the work. But you only need a little drop, and even that's too much. And then start to work your muzzle device down until your finger tight, and then I will just put enough torque on it, you know, maybe like an additional 1/8 of a turn. Oops. Yep, that's enough. Make sure you're still good, and I am still good. And that's how you install it. You know, you could snug it up a little bit more. Honestly, this is timed somewhat for right-handed, I think. Or maybe it's time for left-handed. It doesn't matter. The can's going to live on this for the most part, but that is it. Look, even with all the struggling that you've seen me do throughout this video, it really didn't, you know, take more than like 50 minutes or so of careful, slow filing and cleanup and messing around with the facing tool. Again, you should probably do that by hand. I could have probably done it by hand and not have to take off so much material. That's why I had to shim it out. You see this gap here? That's about what you want. And I'll get it a little bit closer so you could see where, you know, you're barely contacting, right? You want to be a couple threads off. It'll be fine, right? Like, obviously, you want enough threads engaged, but without shims, I was touching. All right, now that this is all installed, you just leave this alone for 24 hours to let the Rocksett cure and do its thing and ensure that the muzzle device won't walk off. So that's it, folks. Thanks for spending time with me and learning how to put a 90-degree crown on your Mini Draco pistol, how not to do it with the PTG tool, but also you learned, hopefully, how to properly install, time, and verify the installation of this JMAC X37 face mount device. I should probably use the 360 instead of going with this, but hey, it is what it is. It'll mostly be suppressed because this is a range toy and, you know, it doesn't recoil that bad. It'll be fine. And to close, as usual, guys, please, man, the world keeps getting worse. It's pretty bad out there, man. I mean, with the hurricane that just hit North Carolina, Tennessee, the death toll is up to 150 plus, you know, not to mention all the people who are displaced and homeless. There's going to be tens of billions of dollars worth of damages. There's all sorts of just bad things, and it gets worse every passing freaking day, man. It's hard. Check in on each other. Family, friends, battle buddies, folks you go to school, if you volunteer with, you work with, folks at church, wherever you go, if you go at all. Anybody important to you, make sure they're good, but check yourself. Make sure that you're good, and if you need to talk, you know, reach out to me. Reach out to somebody. I don't mean to end on, this isn't supposed to be a depressing, but it's not supposed to be a fake uplifting thing. It's supposed to have a somber tone, but I always close on that to remind you guys to, you know, and gals, even though the analytics say there's no gals, but dudes, take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your loved ones. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Mount Let the Hellfire.